everyone, this is Ms. Moriarty, and I'm here to discuss with us our topic 1.6 as well as 1.7. So in this video, I will be talking about the phosphorus cycle and the water cycle. So remember from our discussions in class, phosphorus is an element that is incredibly important for living organisms. We tend to take phosphorus and we fix that into our DNA, our RNA, as well as proteins. So it's a key element that we need and plants need in order to survive. Now, what's kind of unique about the phosphorus cycle compared to some of our other cycles like nitrogen or carbon, its major reservoirs tend to come from rock or sediment. And there's actually no atmospheric component to the phosphorus cycle. And because of this, lots of living organisms like producers tend to be limited by the amount of phosphorus there may be in that given ecosystem, since it may not be so readily available to them. So here, taking a look at the steps of the phosphorus cycle, we can see that the main components of this cycle is the fact that it tends to come from rock or sediment. So how might that phosphorus then move within the cycle? That would be through erosion or weathering. So we can see in step 1 here, the weathering of any uplifted rock that might contribute to phosphates in the land can sometimes make their way to oceans due to runoff. We could see phosphate fertilizers that may be added to agricultural fields can also similarly be taken right via runoff into any type of waterway or potentially absorbed by plants. Any excretion from animals or decomposition from both plants and animals can help to release phosphates into the land or into the water. Dissolved phosphates that then precipitate out of that solution become more solidified into ocean sediment, can over time become phosphate trapped within rocks. And through geological forces, right, like convergent plate boundaries, we can see that phosphate found in rocks from the ocean or even the ocean floor to form mountains can also contribute and help continue that cycle of phosphorus. So the key piece of the phosphorus cycle here, guys, is that there is no atmospheric component. It mainly comes from either rock or sediment, and it usually is cycled via weathering, erosion, as well as runoff. So some human activities that might influence our phosphorus cycle will be things like fertilizer. Remember, we said phosphorus is a limiting nutrient to a lot of producers, and so farmers tend to add phosphorus in their fertilizers to help plants grow. We can also find high amount of phosphates when we use household detergents. When we use those and they wash away into waterways, together these can create ecological dead zones. So this is where we see an excess of phosphorus causing what's called eutrophication, leading to algal blooms or fish kills. All right, now the last biogeochemical cycle is the water cycle. You might also see it referred to as the hydrologic cycle. This cycle is specifically powered by the sun as well as gravity. We can see in the case of the water cycle, water or H2O never changes its chemical form, but it will change into either a solid, liquid, or a gaseous state. We know that the oceans are a primary reservoir, right, or a sink where we might find water. Ice caps found on Earth or even groundwater can also act as smaller reservoirs that hold water for very long periods of time. So, key pieces to the water cycle. We know that solar energy helps to drive this cycle. With solar energy, it's going to heat up Earth's surface, heat up any surface water, causing evaporation. That liquid water changes to a gaseous state. That's going to then rise up into the atmosphere and eventually condense back into precipitation, where then that water will return back to Earth. What happens when that precipitation hits Earth? A couple different things can occur. We can see that water being absorbed by soil, by plants. We could see that water infiltrate and eventually percolate down to form groundwater. We can see that water being taken up through plants, through their roots, and eventually return back to the atmosphere via evapotranspiration from plants. And so the main point of the water cycle here, guys, remember that it is driven by the sun as well as gravity, right, which is how our water is going to eventually return back to Earth. So some human activities that might impact our hydrologic cycle, kind of similar to our carbon cycle, deforestation or the harvesting of trees is going to reduce the amount of evapotranspiration that we see from plants. So we're going to see less and less of that water actually returning back to the atmosphere, which can overall affect annual precipitation rates. As well as less trees means less chances for any water on the ground to be taken up through roots. So we tend to see way more runoff, way more erosion, more flooding. In city-like environments where they've now paved the surface and have created an impermeable surface where water cannot penetrate, percolation cannot occur, this can also increase runoff. And any type of water diversion is going to alter the water cycle. What I mean by water diversion is forming a thing like a dam that's going to stop the flow of water, is going to impact the water cycle in that given ecosystem. All right, guys, that's it for our video. Make sure as you watch the video, you took notes, and please provide at least one question that you still have about the material covered.